Thank you so much.
Okay, Fatima, let's go ahead and get started.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for being here. We're here to hear about insights from the Muslim diversity study presented by Dr. Usman Afzali. But before I go into that, I'll invite our friend Maika to just do a barakia to open our session, please. You can come here.
Kia ora koutou. I'm just going to say a little prayer in Māori. Kia tau, te rangi Māori e, te aroha, me te manakitanga, ki runga i a tātou, tēnei rōpū angahau. Tēnā koe.
Dr. Usman has been working on this study and he is aiming to start the third wave of the data collection soon, looking at Muslims flourishing within the NZ, New Zealand Attitudes and Values study, the longitudinal study, and we are grateful to have him here, but we are also grateful for him to take this initiative to fill the gap that we've been seeing, where we didn't have any data that represented in a rigorous way, in a meaningful way about Muslims. So without further ado, could I request Usman to please come and present. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for the invite, Professor Mohan and Dr. Fatima, and acknowledge both of you and Care for giving me this opportunity. Some of the information I perhaps will go through will be a little bit repetitive because 2 years ago we had a talk where we were starting this project and I was sharing with you how Muslims are perceived. But at that time we did not have data on self-perception of Muslims, which I'm going to talk about too. So we'll briefly recount what we talked about in the past and then we'll make our way to our new data that we have collected. So the initial question we wanted to look at was how are Muslims see? This was something that we have talked about in the past too, and as Dr. Fatima said, the data comes from the New Zealand Attitudes and Values study. This started in 2009 by Professor Chris Sibley, University of Auckland. We just concluded the NZAVS year 16 or wave 16, and we're starting wave 17 in a couple of weeks, which will coincide with wave 3 of Muslim diversity study. The NZAVS sample is generally drawn from the New Zealand electoral roll, and we have about, so we send postal questionnaires. Our coverage is generally national. We are geographically, ethnically, and gender-based representative sample of New Zealanders. And retention rate for overall NZAVS has been 70 to 80%. We have a large research team who focus on different aspects of social values of New Zealanders. More than 80 they publish in on different aspects of life. General focus is on personality, social attitudes, values, religion, employment, prejudice, to name a few, but there are so many others: biological health, psychological health, political views, and of course how they affect each other is something that can always be analyzed. So we are tracking almost 1% of New Zealand adult population each year, so we generally are able to collect data from about 35 to 40,000 people each year, but total sample size cumulative with people who left and people who joined later on is, by the end of year 16 actually, 76,409 participants. So in terms of how Muslims are perceived, one of the measures that we have been consistently looking at is what we call the warmth thermometer. So this basically asks the participants, please rate your feeling of warmth toward the following groups using the feeling thermometer scale for each group. As we can see, we have a lot of identity groups here, and we look at comparative rating, average rating of, for example, Muslims compared to similar other groups, say Chinese, say Indians, say Arabs, say immigrants, refugees, and so on. And that, in a way, tells us the average rating to our, the average warmth rating to our Muslims compared to other groups. And lower rating, of course, would be an indication of prejudice. There is theoretical evidence that lower rating of warmth is a predictor of prejudice, and I will get to that in a second. But we published a few papers on this before, actually after Christchurch shootings. So this paper from 2020 looks at attitudes toward Muslims from 2012 until 2018. And as we can see, we have average rating here across the years. The lowest line is for Muslims, followed by Indians, Chinese, immigrants in general, and Asians in general. As we can see, we have the lowest warmth toward Muslims on average, followed by other groups. We can also see a pattern that these ratings are consistently going up for all groups, but they are not going up in any considerable way. There are a few theories as to why it might be going up, but it's not substantial. But this tells us that Muslims are basically, if we just do the literal definition, they're the least liked group in New Zealand, among other similar groups. Since data collection is constantly happening before and after shootings, this paper looks at, we did two papers looking at warmth, average warmth before shooting and after shooting. So the blue is after shooting and yellow is before shooting. As we can see, we have a sudden rise here after rating of these three items versus the warmth rating. And this is from about 33,000 participants. And this was done by our one of honor students at University of Canterbury last year. So in this one, we're basically trying to do a correlation between Islamophobia scale and warmth. Reverse code warmth, we will call it basically coldness toward Muslims. And we find a strong correlation between warmth thermometer measure and Islamophobia average score, which tells us that those who expressed lower warmth toward Muslims also expressed high Islamophobic attitudes. And this implies that perhaps warmth thermometer measure can be used as a proxy to measure Islamophobia. Basically means the previous findings that we had in terms of anti-Muslim prejudice based on warmth thermometer, they basically reflect Islamophobia too. Another question we'd also wanted to look at was what are the factors that are associated with these types of attitudes? So we are looking at attitudes of anyone else in New Zealand except Muslims, toward Muslims. So we found that lower warmth Islamophobia was associated with being male, being older, being religious other than Muslim, living rurally, and being of Asian ethnicity for some odd reason. Higher warmth or no Islamophobia was predicted by higher level of education, higher socioeconomic status, and Maori or Pacific ethnicity. Now, these are the brief findings of how Muslims are perceived in New Zealand based on NZDVS. But of course, the question that happened to me and I wanted to look at was how Muslims see themselves. For me, it was important as a Muslim to look at this question, but also because Christchurch shooting happened, it was important to also look at Muslims' perception of themselves. The problem we had that the NZDVS sample did not have enough Muslims in it. So among those 76,000 participants and recurring 35,000 plus each year, we only had between 50 and 80 Muslims. So we had to collect further data targeted from Muslims across New Zealand to be able to understand their attitudes and their self-perception. And that is how the Muslim diversity study started. It's a booster study within NZDVS. It launched in 2023. It established in partnership and co-designing with the Muslim community to improve representation of Muslims in NZDVS. So the idea was that we did not want to start a new study. We just wanted to use the measures that we already have and just increase the sample size of Muslims. We reached out, so in this paper that was recently published, we talk about the co-designing process, the community consultation process, how we went on, asked about the feasibility of study in the community and how it should be done, what shouldn't be done, so on and so forth. So that's very well detailed here, which I will not get into now, but I can talk about it anytime. But my understanding is that CARE knows that much better than me because we basically learn from CARE as to how to go and work with the community. And we did not do the best job, of course. I think CARE is doing very well. So what we were able to do was to increase the Muslim sample from less than 0.1% to almost 1% of New Zealand Muslim population in the wave one of MDS. So the general purposes of MDS also were to document resilience, flourishing, meaning-making, well-being over the lifespan. One of the questions besides self-perception in terms of prejudice to me also was why Muslims are resilient, why they thrive, or do they thrive at all? This is the question that was posed to me time and again after Christchurch shootings, and I want to look at this further. In addition to that, I also had a little bit of, I will not call it issue, with signaling, because we always talk about prejudice, Islamophobia, so on and so forth. I also want to look at some of the positive psychological aspects of Muslims' lives in New Zealand, because for me, this is more promising than looking at all the negative pictures of prejudice and Islamophobia. So that was another thing I wanted to look at, and obviously we were able to document this from the available data. But also it will help us understand the challenges to flourishing and understand how Muslims overcome adversity. In a larger sense, we also wanted to address the gap in research on how adversity shapes the experiences of Muslims in New Zealand. And overall, the representation of Muslims as researchers and as research participants, that is something we wanted to address within MDS. So we think that with that we would be able to amplify the voices of Muslims in the NZAVS record, to understand the beliefs and attitudes and behaviors of New Zealanders for future, in general, like Muslims are part of New Zealanders for future generations. And very importantly, to share our findings with different stakeholders, be it government, community organizations, rights advocates. Today we have another talk in the community in the evening. So this is our 6th talk this year. Our promise was that we go to each city and share our findings back with the community. And tomorrow we are going to Nelson, which we'll have another talk there. So that is one thing we do. In addition to that, we also go to government and organizations, and whoever is keen to understand, we are more than happy to share. Like this is one of, I feel myself, I'm part of CARE, but I also feel like this is also a session of sharing our findings back with academics. So for the first wave of MDS, I will give you some brief descriptives. We had 667 Muslims. So here we filtered them based on religion because Muslim is of course an identity group, in the faith identity group. Muslims of New Zealand, they come from about more than 50 countries and more than 80 ethnicities. But we were not able to divide or to analyze based on that because the sample size would become too small. So we only looked at faith groups in terms of descriptives. As you can see here, of these, about 21,000 plus are those who do not identify with any religion, and we have this 667 Muslims, and as you can see, we have other faith groups in our sample too. In terms of average age, Muslim participants were on average younger. The reason for that will be that we mostly reached out to universities and university student associations. The other reason for that also will be that it's mostly those who will be able to complete the English questionnaire, and they are those that will be educated enough to, not educated in English, have literacy of English to be able to do that. We did not translate a questionnaire to local languages. The reason for that was because we were told by the community, we were advised first that those who do participate, they will be those who actually understand the language. The second was purely methodological. We wanted to be able to compare Muslims' responses with other groups directly. And if we were to translate, then that back translation adds a complexity that we could not address within this. So for that reason, we kept it as it is. But as a result of that, we had a younger population of Muslims participating on average in the group. In terms of birth in New Zealand, 23% reported, which is very similar to census. Census shows about 25% of Muslims born in New Zealand, and we show 23%. In terms of gender, again, as we can see in all faith groups here, in fact, only 40% of male from different groups participate in NZDVS, and 60% are generally women. 60-70% are generally women. So one of the items we wanted to look at was in terms of self-perception. These are 4 items that are scattered in the questionnaire. They are not one after another. They are different parts of the questionnaire, but we're comparing these 4 responses. Discrimination because of my age, because of my gender, because of my ethnicity, and because of religious and or spiritual beliefs. The model I'm presenting to you is controlling for demographic variables that are unlikely to be influenced by religious identification, for example, age, place of birth, ethnicity, and gender. Which basically, if you were statistically controlling for that, which basically means if the age and place of birth and ethnicity and gender were similar, what will be the reported discrimination of different religious groups in relation to these 4 items. So we want to look at association between religious affiliation and well-being in the longer run without inferring causality, because with 1 year worth of data, we were not able to do any causal modeling at that stage. Total sample size was 32,000 plus. So if you look at the first model, we are looking at perceived age-based discrimination. As we can see here, when it comes to age discrimination, it's almost similar across all groups. Gender discrimination is also almost similar again across all groups. So they are weighted means, and we see that perceived ethnic discrimination is also almost the same across all groups. But when it comes to religious discrimination, this is the highest, one of the highest reported discriminations compared to other faith groups. So this tells us that reported religious discrimination is highest in Muslims. The others are comparable with other religious groups. So the more pronounced one is based on religious identity. We looked at psychological well-being. So we are looking at anxiety, depression, fatigue, and some of the signs of rumination disorder. And this was quite interesting because here we see that these scores are comparable, be it anxiety at the top left, be it depression at the top right, be it fatigue, be it rumination. They all almost give us a comparable response, regardless of being non-religious or Muslim or Anglican or Buddhist or Catholic. The responses are not substantially different, which is quite surprising. So how can you report religious discrimination or any type of discrimination, but your mental health is still fine, or this is what you're reporting? So the base rate of mental health issues are happening across New Zealand, that is a fact, but they are not different between different religious groups. Again, we have a question on your biological health, and that again is similar. Surprisingly, we have a short form of health survey, which is the left graph. This is similar, almost similar, not substantially different. Hours of exercise are similar across all these groups, and sleep hours are also similar. They sleep almost the same, average of same hours. We ask questions in terms of what we call gratitude, life satisfaction, sense of meaning and purpose. So here what we see is that Muslims report one of the high sense of meaning and purpose compared to other groups. Again, that's despite the fact that they report discrimination. So how can you report discrimination but you still have a high? So these are the questions that are happening to your minds, that okay, you also show high meaning and purpose in your life. We ask questions in terms of, okay, do you have enough help available to you? So there are different types of social help questions. Again, we see that across different religious groups, they all have access to similar types of help in the community, or someone to turn to when they need help, or get some support from someone when they need. So this tells you that the level of support is comparable to all of them. No group receives more support compared to others. In terms of self-esteem, again, Muslims report high self-esteem, one of the high self-esteems compared to other groups. Now, if we think about all these findings together, Muslims report relatively high religious discrimination. Their psychological and biological well-being profiles are comparable with other groups. They report high self-esteem, high sense of meaning and purpose. But they do receive just similar level of social support. And the data are based on a large sample size. We are comparing hundreds of Muslims with thousands of other groups. We also have another paper under review. We are only looking at Muslims versus anyone who identifies not as a Muslim, which I did not put here because I was thinking that more religious groups will be more interesting to look at. And as I said earlier, the model is adjusted for demographic measures. So the question then comes, when I look at it from the perspective of psychology of religion, something that I currently teach, what are those factors that perhaps might buffer the negative psychological effects of discrimination in Muslims? So because it is a attitudes and values study, we also ask questions about religious belief. When it comes to religious belief, we ask questions in terms of belief in God, and as we can see, Muslims report high level of belief in God, but also do other groups. Belief in a spiritual life force, Christians report this higher compared to others because this is mostly a Christian concept. In terms of identification with religion, Muslims report one of the highest. We also have other groups who report high identification with religion. This is, I guess, Christian others. We also have Christian NFTs, no further denominations. And of course, non-religious, they will not have any level of, that score. This is on a scale of 1 to 7, so this will be 1. And in terms of spiritual identification, this is the score of Muslims. When it comes to religious practices, though, Muslims score high. In terms of monthly religious service attendance, which will be similar to going to Friday prayers or any other similar things, Muslims report high compared to others. When it comes to weekly prayers, like how many times do you pray in the week? This black dot is about at 35, so it tells you that a lot of them are like praying 5 times a day, and there are so many who pray even more than 5 times. There's a lot of supplementary prayers that people do. So, I don't know. 100 will be like exaggeration, but there's a lot. Yeah.
So what's the then? Is the red dot the average then?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that. Red dot is the average. Yeah.
Okay. So, but having a darker black line somewhere at
that's like
is
that's like kind of a maximum, I would say.
okay.
Yeah, but above that will be some outliers.
Few outliers.
Yeah, a few outliers. When it also comes to reading weekly scripture, we have high rating of Muslims. Now, when it comes to weekly prayers, like prayers would mean different things for different religious groups. So this is not a homogeneous response. For Muslims, prayer is not just put your hands up and praying. It will be literally the act of obligatory 5-time prayers. But for other, it might be something much easier because when we think about there is an idea in psychology of religion when we look at the costly displays of behavior. So prayer itself, 5 times prayer, getting up before dawn or praying later in the night, during the day, this is one of the costly displays of religion. This takes more time compared to just sitting there because it's not just prayer, the act of prayer. You also have to wash up before that, so it is a few rituals back to back. So the fact that there is this still high response, that is, but it's important to notice that these are, when you say religious service attendance, that is in the mosque, and a lot of people also go to pray in the mosque because a lot of mosques are actually near Muslim localities. So what this tells us that perhaps there is a hypothesis in terms of flourishing due to religion, due to religious practice. Some research by Tyler van der Wiel that proposes that, and also the idea of religious community making, helping us to buffer against the negative effects of Islamophobia, and this is what we think might be happening here. We are arguing in this descriptive paper that perhaps there is some signal towards the buffering effect of religious community making in terms of Islam. Like when you have a religious community around you, you go and meet with them anyways for prayers, you connect with them, you have that support around you, perhaps you report lesser discrimination. You still report high discrimination, but your psychological well-being profile is still similar with other groups. And we think this is what might be happening here. Now, we cannot be certain of this because initially I said it's not causal. We only had 1 year worth of data. Other data are coming. We collected second wave data only finished a couple of weeks ago. So we will look at those and see if this pattern stays. And also with 2 years worth of data, we should be able to do some causal modeling to see what's happening, and that will give us more certainty if these findings stand. As far as we are looking at it now, this is what we see. So the next question will be, is this buffering or psychological effects of religion, is this something that happens everywhere else, or is just we see here? There's a lot of research on this from across the globe. I'm not talking about all of it. I remember one paper somewhere in Gambia, which is reports similar patterns from a Muslim population. And this one that you see here, this is actually by Tyler Van der Wiel himself. And we are looking at the suicide incidence rate per 100,000 persons per year. And as we can see, it is higher in those who never attend any religious practice, religious service, and it is lower. It keeps getting lower in those who attend some religious service less than once per week, or more than once per week. So this tells you, even in the longer run, when it comes to suicide, we see low incidence of this. I mean, there's other explanations for that too, but this kind of gives us some signal. So these types of results or patterns happen in other societies and other religious groups too. So we are not saying that it's just Islam that helps Muslims. It's generally religious community making or religious behavior, or perhaps religious practice that gives you some. I mean, there's a lot of other research on the religion helping with coping when there's anxiety and so on. So all in all, we want to suggest that perhaps religious identity, community, and practices may enhance self-esteem while buffering against the negative effects of prejudice. But we want to investigate these questions further and longitudinally. And as of now, we only have one wave of data that I presented to you. And as I promised, it was a short 35 to 40 minute talk, and this ends here. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the core team of my project, Joe, Chris, Kumar, Arif, and my larger team of research assistants. So it was not easy to collect data from 600 people across New Zealand. We had a massive team of RAs, and we still have a few of them who are collecting data. We have Tuba here, our amazing assistant research fellow who is helping massively, and others. So some of these are no more working with us. They are only for year one. The rest of them are still working with us. So this is a massive team and massive effort. And I have only been able to be part of it and do it because of the help I received from these. This research is placed in Otago, Canterbury, Auckland, Wellington, funded by Templeton, of course, and NZDVS at its core. I also want to thank our collaborators. We have a lot of research collaborators who helped us do some of our work and some of our publications, which are local to New Zealand and also overseas. We have a massive advisory group who I reached out to in the year one. Thanks to them, because of that, we were able to design it in a more sensitive and culturally appropriate way, I believe, thanks to leaders and organizations who helped us take this off the ground, to those individuals who have participated in NZDVS since 2009, and Muslims who have participated in this research so far, last year and for the times to come, and all of you for being here and giving me this opportunity. If you want to know more, of course, my email address is there. You can always write to me, but even better than that, we have a website which you can click on. You can find via Google. Just search up Muslim Diversity Study, and you shall be able to see more information about our research, our team, our publications, and anything that might come in the future. That's it. Thank you so much.
Just one question. What's the time lapse between first round, second round, and third round? And is there a reason behind each of this?
So it generally starts in October and ends next September. So that's how we go year by year.
Okay.
I don't know the reason behind it, but that is how we have been going on.
It's yearly and...
Yeah. It's yearly. So we ended our data collection in September. Now it's just a matter of changing the URLs and putting up. Yeah, it never stops. So we're still receiving postal responses of, so
The second round.
yeah, the second round. So some of our participants are completing it on a paper, and those are still coming.
And so are you able to, I'm not saying names, but are you able to see that this was the respondent who attempted in the first wave and it's the same person in the second?
Yeah, so I'm not able to see that. What we do is we anonymize. So when we receive a response, we have a dedicated team in Auckland headquarters. What they do is they assign that person a code, and then and based on that code, they are sent the questionnaire again next year. So if that code receives another response, we add.
So it is truly longitudinal.
It is, yeah, and it's panel data. So we are trying to get data from each person each year. But of course, some people withdraw, some people travel, some people not want to participate anymore, and because of that, I think 70 to 80% is quite a massive retention, because with the Muslim community, the initial reports that I have so far, we were not able to achieve 80% of those 600 in wave 2. We only received about 30 to 40%, which is a bit unfortunate, but this is what it is. So,
is there a way to determine that, because I'm sure some people will be leaving, like say students especially, might have actually left this year, so it's not that they didn't respond, but they didn't respond because they're no longer in New Zealand, or have gone either back home or to another country.
so the way we do that is we initially send them a postal questionnaire to their postal address. If we don't receive a response from that, we then send them an email, because we have their email, a lot of them we have email addresses. When they don't respond to that either, we call. So these 30,000 people get called each year. So we have, again, a big team in Auckland who call everybody once and reminds them that, hey, we sent you a questionnaire a while back, are you still keen to participate? And I did those calls myself to Muslim participants, and I had one of my RAs who called the female Muslim participants. So we did that. I did that over the past 3 months. And I think I was telling this to someone a few days ago, that the best part of my work was actually that. When we call and we hear, there's a lot of people who are really appreciative of this work. And to me, that was, the experience of being in the space to do this work is, of course, very important. But that was more energizing. That we talk and the community says that we actually appreciate this, and that was quite good. So I was fortunate to talk with so many, and so were my RAs. So yeah, we called them, but I think this year, this is on the record now. This year it was, because my transition from Canterbury to Otago, that happened at the beginning of the year, I think, and we started calling a bit later in the year, so that might be a factor. We were not able to give enough time to our participants to complete it by September. We started calling a little bit too late this year. That might be one factor. But I do know that some of our participants have moved, and some of them still completed. Because I had a few of them who emailed back and it's like, oh, we are overseas now, but we are coming back. So they still completed their questionnaires from overseas. A couple of countries that I will not name for reason of confidentiality. But yeah, we do have some who do leave. And we also had a few who said, like, I don't want to participate any further. And that's fine, because this is, at the end of the day, it's voluntary. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Usman, it's really powerful, the kind of explanation you offer in terms of religious practice and potentially resilience, right? That helps you cope with Islamophobia.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, one of the questions I had was in terms of how you operationalize those behaviors of religious practice, or what it entails. Is there a range, and if you were to follow up on this, would you be able to parse out the range of religious activities?
That's a very good question, and this is one of our limitations generally in NZAVS, because it's preliminarily a very long questionnaire. It takes people about more than an hour to complete for those who are actually fluent. The way we describe the question is we say it's a mile wide and an inch deep. So we only ask some questions about a lot of attitudes, but that's about it, and a lot of behaviors. But we cannot, to borrow your word, parse out the quality or the definition of those. And as I briefly mentioned also, some of those behaviors will be different for different groups. My solution to that will be to have a qualitative follow-up. And we applied for a grant. We did not get it. We only heard about it this week.
Yeah.
So the idea will be, ideally, I would want to go and do a qualitative follow-up. Based on the current NZ AVS setting, we cannot say that. And this is one of our limitations. But that we cannot measure that by this question. Yeah. So those are some of the stuff we cannot actually assess from this. So it is just purely survey-based quantitative work with all of its limitations. This is the best we can do with these types of data, as you know.
I'm keeping an eye out on our Facebook and YouTube to see if our audience has any questions. Please feel free to type those. We'll be happy to read those out to Usman. So building up on this, Usman, your study is framed as Muslim diversity study.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see what is your sense of the diversity of Muslims that you get from this study.
Let me tell you why we call it Muslim diversity study first. So actually the correct name they applied under was a national longitudinal study of Muslim diversity and flourishing. That's the long name. It was too long. I wanted to call it Muslim flourishing study, but then Bulbulia told me that flourishing is a word which will not be, it might be alien to some. A lot of people would not know what flourishing means, so let's call it Muslim diversity studies. We borrowed another word from the title, and that's how it became Muslim diversity study. Now, we have not actually analyzed, we tried to look at the diversity of Muslims within MDS, but again, because of sensitivity of the question, and we did not want to we tried to filter based on ethnic groups, but then the sample size were quite small, and that we were not able to see any patterns. But also another thing with that will be that if we say, okay, in specific geography, it also becomes a little bit of like, oh, this background of Muslims participated more, these participated less, then that creates some sort of connotation in my own mind. So I told Joe, don't show me those data because I did not want to know who did participate more and who didn't. I did not want to create anything in my mind about who did and did not participate. So I did not look at those data myself. But my understanding is that we have, based on the people who I called and based on initially we try to have diverse group of RAs in the data that we have. I have not looked at it in that sense. The other thing also is that, as mentioned earlier, there's a lot to explore from the data that we have, because when the wave 2 ended, wave 1 ended, and wave 2 started, that was when transition to Otago happened. And the first semester, I was not able to focus on this at all. Only started looking at it a couple of months ago. So this is based on what we have only been doing so far, but I think we will be able to do some further analysis and put those reports up on the website as we have them.
Like, for instance, is there a gender difference in experiences of Islamophobia?
That's actually a very good, we have a paper on that, sorry. One of my, a master's student actually looked at that recently. No, I don't have it online. One of Chris's master's students, this is a very good, thank you, this is a very good question. So Masab Bashir, he looked at, the paper is currently under review in Museum of Psychology. He did his master's degree with Chris, and he looked at interaction between gender and religion in Muslims versus Christians. So he used Christian as a baseline group. And he did just a basic ANOVA. So what we find is the self-reported discrimination was highest in Muslim women, followed by Muslim men, followed by Christian women, followed by Christian men. So that is one thing that we, yeah, I should have brought that also. I did not have all the data from it, I guess. But yeah, we have started looking into those questions, but it depends, who is actually interested to look at these. We do have a lot of data. We can ask and answer a lot of questions, but as you know much very well than me, we need to have people to do that. So I am interested in these questions that I looked at, and I'm still looking at. But as we find more people that are interested, I will very well be interested to look at, for example, some of the body image issues, or some other questions that we do have in the questionnaire, and look at those. Yeah, and if is anyone who is interested, from those who will hear this online or now, just reach out, and we might be able to analyze some data together and publish.
I thought when you were talking about diversity, in my mind I was thinking alongside demographic diversity.
Yeah.
There is also diversity. For example, when you are seeing prayer, there are people who are on the 100 scale, and there are also people who are on the 20 scale.
Yeah.
There's that. And while our average for Muslims is higher, say, in the purpose and meaning, but there's still diversity. Yes, majority may be flat.
Maybe they might pray 3 times, but they might report higher self-esteem. They might be, we know that from the backgrounds we come, that sometimes, exceptionally, those who pray a lot, they might not be, the best people. I'm sorry, I'm saying this on the record. And we might have people who might not pray that many times, but they might be, happier, or because I think it's about the quality more than the quantity, and
was thinking, would they, is there an option to not declare?
Yeah.
Because I would never want to declare.
Yeah, because it also
Because
comes
it's
under showing off.
Yeah, it's a.
It's called Riyah.
Not even in a yes, no, huh?
In a yes, no, but how much? Because it's supposed to be, there's that.
Between you and God.
Yeah, the one hand should not see the other hand.
But what if, do you practice zakat? Yes.
Oh yes, that.
So we did not have the specific zakat question. Again, the reason for that was because we could not and did not want to change a lot from NZAVS. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
we kept it as it is. Let me see if we have the bigger table here. I don't think we do, but if I can pull it, I can show you how much money they reported giving in charity. And
Is it going to be a PPT, or do you want me to just change the setting to it?
no,
Sorry.
I will. If I can find it, I'll pull it to that screen. But I don't know if I can find it. Born in New Zealand, agreeable charitable donation. Yeah, here. So here we are looking at. It's the same data, but you're looking at Muslim versus non-Muslim. So again, self-identification. So it's almost the same findings, but here we have the charitable donations. So on average,
Yeah.
1170 is the average for non-Muslim, and about 862 is the average for Muslim. But we also have the question on your income. So we can then compare, factor that into it, and employment status. So in that sense, then we can we did not analyze this, but we can look at that further to see, which proportion of your income actually you are giving to charity. Another question of, charitable also is like, we have hours of voluntary work. So these two, volunteering your time and volunteering your money. These are two of the measures of religious commitment. So that is something we have not analyzed, but we can look into. So this is another paper that we are looking at Muslims versus
All the other groups.
on average.
Wow.
So this is here is more pronounced compared to the other one. But yeah, so for example, belief in God, 40% versus 91%. Religious service attendance, 5.31 versus 0.77. Yeah, discrimination, religious, ethnic and religious. Here ethnic also becomes a bit more pronounced, and religious discrimination, but the others are kind of similar. So yeah, this is another one that I did not explain, that this could be looked at. So this one is currently only under review. It's available as a preprint from our website, and yeah, if there is interest, you can look at it.
Beautiful. Why don't you close? But I want to look at to see if there are any questions online, just to make sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Usman.
Thank you so much, Usman and Tuba, for being here. Professor Mohan for hosting us, for care, for the space, and for people who are here to hear us. Thank you so much. And we wish you best of luck for your evening talk. So those who are watching, please join us in the evening. And thank you so much for being here.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan.
Tuba, is the evening session